Hi, welcome to another review by Gaming. This year has been a really good year for gaming so far. We've already had great AAA games like the Dead Space remake, Hogwarts Legacy, and many more. Today we are going to talk about another great game that isn't getting the same spotlight, but we think it still deserves your attention. This hidden gem is none other than A Space for the Unbound by Toge Productions. Let me tell you about this wonderful indie game so you can check it out. A Space for the Unbound is a game that's been marketed and advertised as a coming-of-age love story between two high schoolers with superpowers. And while that certainly is true and it's part of what makes the game so special, there's so much more to this indie game than meets the eye. At its core, A Space for the Unbound is a game about exploring depths of human emotions and experiences. It's a game that invites players to confront their own struggles and traumas while also diving deep into the past of game's key characters. Looking at the gameplay of the game, A Space for the Unbound is categorized as an atmospheric 2D RPG game that involves some level of puzzle solving. For the most part, the gameplay aspects of the game that involve puzzle solving and combat are quite simple in the first chapters of the game. However, don't let this fool you, the action and the puzzles turn up a notch in the later chapters, where you may end up facing the same enemies multiple times or even scratching your head over a particularly difficult puzzle. One of the interesting things about the game involves a red book, which the main character used to space dive into the minds of the NPCs to understand the trauma and overcome the obstacles. In order to progress, the main character must help these NPCs overcome or come to terms with the trauma that they are carrying. While some of these can be simple and easy to navigate, others have a surprising amount of depth to them, and you could find yourself sympathizing with some of these characters. A Space for the Unbound has amazing art direction. The rural side of Indonesia is brought to life using neatly animated pixel art with such attention to detail to the background. From the sunny sky filled with clouds, grass and trees swaying to the summer breeze, everything looks brilliant. There are also moments where you would see cars and other vehicles moving along the busy street, while other characters are minding their business, such as playing a soccer ball or listening to music. Most of the characters have something interesting to say when you interact with them, and the dialogue options can be quite interesting as well. The soundtrack of the game suits it perfectly. Mojican Studios really outdid themselves by crafting a varying segment of tracks that fit perfectly to the different tones in the game. Not only are some of the songs extremely good, but ambient tracks that play in the background as you traverse the different landscapes of rural Indonesia are very well made, and some of these tracks will have you playing them on rewind long after you've completed the game. Personally, my top selections from the soundtrack are Within the Dream,
As I have forgotten, the truth collapsed into thin air, and I was lost in my dream again.
and Selfishness by Christabel Enora.
Lately they can't go.
One another notable thing about the soundtrack is the absence of music in key moments in the cutscenes where the messages are more honestly conveyed to the players. Let's talk a bit more about the gameplay of A Space for the Unbound. I feel like the developers have set up the initial chapter of the game, by the way, which is available as a free demo on Steam if you want to check it out. That's the important mechanics of the game without showing the full deck. Players are able to experience the basic mechanics like combat, navigation, and other certain mechanics that are unique to the gameplay experience like space dive in the first chapter of the game. One very cool thing about the Space of the Unbound is that you will be able to pet and name almost all the cats you come across the game. Some of these cats play an important role in the story and gameplay experience as well. Coming into the story for Space for the Unbound, it's an anime-inspired slice-of-life story about two high schoolers overcoming depression, anxiety, and exploring their relationship as two otherwise ordinary teenagers who are gifted with superpowers. The main characters must investigate a certain supernatural occurrence and uncover the truth behind a web of secrets and dreams. It ends up being quite different from a relaxing slice-of-life story because at the end of the day, A Space for the Unbound is a story about self-discovery and self-acceptance. The creators do a wonderful job of portraying how people perceive the main characters and how difficult it can be to really achieve these things when you don't have the support of the loved ones. At the end of the day, A Space for the Unbound is a game that's about so much more than just superpowers and anime-inspired visuals. It's a game about confronting difficult emotions, facing one's fears, and coming to a greater understanding of oneself and the world around us. We live in a world that often shies away from difficult emotions and topics, and most of the AAA video games are no exception. Perhaps a handful of titles like The Last of Us and God of War. But when it comes to exploring these themes in an honest and authentic way, most of the times it's the indie titles that take the lead. Why is that? Well, for one, difficult topics like mental health, trauma, and grief are not easily marketable. They are not the kind of themes that will sell millions of copies or attract a global, worldwide audience. But perhaps more than that, these are also topics that are hard for a lot of gamers to engage with as well. After all, video games are supposed to be fun and enjoyable, right? But the truth is, these emotions and experiences are part of being human. And it's only by understanding and coming to terms with them that we can truly accept ourselves. This is why I believe games like A Space for the Unbound are so important. A Space for the Unbound is an indie game that explores themes of mental health, trauma, and healing. It is not a game that will appeal to everyone, but for those who are looking for an emotional and reflective experience, it's an incredible journey. Through its beautiful art style, compelling characters, and a poignant story, A Space for the Unbound invites players to confront their own emotions and experiences. It is not always an easy journey, but it's a very rewarding one. So if you're looking for a game that challenges you to think deeply about yourself and the world around you, I highly recommend A Space for the Unbound.